It was Victor Hugo who said, "There is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come." Probably the rollout of GST, which would happen on 1st July, would be the day on which this particular FAD series would be already with you. It is also an epoch-making incident for an event that the textile industry is assembling under one roof, from the raw materials of fashion to the finished goods, from the fabric or fiber makers to fabric makers to processors to garment makers and beyond. The stakeholders, the designers, the craftsmen, the decision makers, the managers, the entrepreneurs, all are going to be there in this Textiles 2017 in Gandhinagar. These two I would consider to be a game changer, mainly because it is signaling a change which is in the air. It is not yet happened, but it could happen. Why I feel is that textile industry is always considered in Indian context as a heritage industry. But the moment we consider the textile industry, it has had a checkered history. We had seen that India was used to produce various cotton fabrics for exports during the 200 years of British regime. And before that, there has been much of ruptured history in terms of various weaving traditions of many places which got disturbed in the historical processes. However, when you look at the entire country from one part of the country, whether it is, we call it Kashmir to Cape Comorin, or from any part of India to any part, recently, I am told that there are new expressions coming. Even Kathak is being mentioned. So there is a need for understanding that the textile traditions of India are available in every nook and corner. And that is what makes this particular industry extremely significant for the Indian population. And when you look at, let us just take the example of two places. And these two places could give you an idea of the powerful context of an apparel economy. Let's take the example of Panipat. The Panipat home furnishings and home textile industry is so strong that when you look at, it is employing something like 250,000 people. It has got more than 1,500 units registered. It has got 40,000 crore of business happening from there. And you look at Tirupur. It is just many words have been used about Tirupur. But if you look at nearly $3.1 billion of business happen in Tirupur, and I think more than 6.6 lakh people are employed in the textile industry around. Therefore, when we look at the industry, I feel that there is a new change in the air from the elements of this huge industry which employs directly over 35 million people. And some of the estimates say that the indirect employment is over 60 million people. And there are other estimates which indicate that 12 crore people, if you really look at, are involved in, if you take from farm to fiber, fiber to fabric, fabric to fashion, fashion to retail. If you really look at, it could be 10% of India's population or more involved in this industry. But in the last few years, if you look at from farming to non-farming, kind of migration which happens, textile has not been playing a role. And generally, after the disintegration of mills, integrated huge mills, at one point of time, nearly 189 or 200 mills existed in Ahmedabad and surrounding areas. And part of Maharashtra also had large number of mills which were producing. After the Datta Samant strike and various things which happened in India, the proliferation of power looms started. and the power looms were never really recognized, and it had a growth which was completely disorganized, and they were unorganized in by all means, and did not have the necessary tax liabilities or labor liabilities to most of the times, and they had really proliferated, and they became the major sustenance of India's fabric production. So when you look at maybe 11-12% of India's fabric requirements come from mill sector, and maybe 7 or 8 or 9% from handlooms, and the rest all came from power loom sector, and that became the sustenance of India's textile industry. And because of this unorganized nature of fabric production, there was really not ready to cut fabrics were not really available, whether it is from Surat or from Bhiwanti or from Ichalkaranchi or from any other power loom and mill senders. And that almost made a big problem for the garment makers to really get the right fabrics in 60 or 90 days, and the cycles became extremely unviable over a period of time. And this went on affecting the chain in many ways. When there was cotton surplus and the spinning became a very strong industry in India, the spinners really profited became very strong by exporting the yarn, and it became a powerful yarn exporting lobby. And there were times when government of India had to clamp down, constraint or restraints on the yarn exports and even cotton exports for that matter, to contain the prices which are available then for the handloom and domestic consumption. So the industry has been going through a checkered history, and textile policies have attempted to move from a single fiber approach to a truly multi-fiber approach, and the quotas got dismantled in 2005, and the industry then started looking more downstream, because the employment, if you really look at out of 35 million employment, we are looking at almost 12 million people employment or more, 12.5 or 13 million people in the downstream apparel sector alone. So there is a large concentration of employment beginning to happen into the downstream, and more automation happening in the spinning, and of course larger number of spindles are controlled by just single men or few people, and the mill sector also became extremely automated by and large, and the major thrust of employment potential became more and more focused on the apparel or the downstream production. Now, in this context, I was trying to look at my new approach, which I want to propose to the government and to the stakeholders, which I would then call it under 3 or 4 sections. Maybe that this FAD series will split this presentation into maybe 2 or 3 episodes. But what I want to first look at is the game changers and the need for an integrated fashion ecosystem. It is not the first time I have written about it. In fact, there is a detailed article on this subject which is available on my website, when I had proposed the need for a fashion ecosystem. Why I am talking about the fashion ecosystem is, globally, when you look at 800 billion, roughly $800 billion of the market size, we are looking at the raw materials of fashion coming to the garment makers or the production, which is geographically spread out in different countries, and it had what you call the low-cost geography, where the movement of production shifted from high-cost economies of US and Europe, and it traveled to countries where it found low-cost production, including India, China, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Vietnam, and it started spreading into these countries more and more. And China became almost 35% of the total world exports of apparel, and India is still at about 4% and above. And there are countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam and Cambodia which have in the recent past have exceeded even India. So there is a changing geography of this, and with the new approach to automation, computerization, artificial intelligence, there is every chance that the geography based on low cost will also undergo change, and it will become that more and more it will shift to where the consumption is. So the closer to the consumption kind of approach is taking place. However, apparel and textile industry is still a very spread out industry. Fabric production may be in China, and the garment production may be in India and Bangladesh, the accessories may be in Hong Kong, the designing may be in the headquarters of Nike or Adidas in US, or it may be in Europe in some Germany or elsewhere, and the consumption may be spread across different supermarkets or department stores or specialty chains or various online e-commerce platforms. So it is a highly spread out industry, but it is an ecosystem which works through this aggregated kind of activity, and that is where the need for India to understand this aggregation is in actually the consumer's mind.